Parents have the same consistent questions. What can I do to stop bullying? And how can I prevent it from happening in the first place? In this discussion, we're going to answer these questions and give you the tools to effectively deal with bullying with your children. Joe, what do I do if my child is being bullied?
Well, Rosemary, the thing that I think that needs to be stressed is that being victimized is a scary place for a young child. The child needs to feel protected. The child needs to feel safe. So that reassurance is critically important as a first step in diffusing the concern on the part of the child that they have someone who is there to protect them, to keep them safe.
So really pause, listen to your child, and not be so quick to react in an emotional way, is what you're saying.
Yes, and to really confer an atmosphere of safety for the youngster.
Another important thing to do is to affirm when your child has come to you, and affirm that they did the right thing by coming and telling you, and that you're really ready to calmly listen to what they are going to tell you about the situation, and to kind of gather some facts and find out what's really going on so that you'll be in a better position to know how to help them and how to deal with the situation.
But Joe, isn't bullying a rite of passage?
Well, bullying itself is far from a normative behavior that we should ignore or not pay attention to. And unfortunately, for many adults in this country, it is perceived as a rite of passage, and that is a wrong way to look at it.
Which is why it's so important for adults to understand what bullying truly is.
Absolutely.
I often hear parents say that they don't want their child to be a wimp when they're being bullied. Isn't it better if my child is the one to deliver the first blow?
Absolutely not. In fact, that approach may put the child at more risk for being hurt, and we would never encourage the intentional performance of aggressive behavior towards another. In fact, that just feeds into the cycle that we're trying to prevent in the first place.
Trudy, I know there are a lot of parents out there who want the answer to this question. What do I do if my child is bullying another child?
I think the first thing the parent needs to do is to gather information to find out what happened, what their child did, and have discussion about what bullying is so that the child understands that that behavior is not an okay behavior and bullying is not acceptable in any circumstances. And then take that moment as a teachable moment to explain to the child what they could have done in that situation so that no one would get hurt the next time. The other thing is to also take opportunities to teach your child some empathy and perspective, because bullying, the bottom line is it's a lack of empathy for their fellow peer. So you can do that with supplemental tools such as wonderful children's stories or storytelling, watching a show, and having discussions with your child in a safe social setting so that they can learn what it feels like to be in the shoes of another person.
And I would think role-playing would be very helpful as well.
Role-playing is crucial. I highly recommend it, role-play, 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 to give kids an opportunity to figure out how to respond to somebody, especially when somebody's being mean to us. Our tendency is to put that bully hat on ourselves, which is what I use as a metaphor for children. And I think that if we can show kids they don't have to be mean back, they have a choice, and to role-play how they can respond to get away from that situation, and then to report to a grown-up they feel safe with so that they get protection and the kid that's wearing the bully hat gets help.
So often we don't give the help to the bully because there's a reason why the bully is engaged in these behaviors.
Right. It's a learned behavior and it can be unlearned. The other important thing is to look into education and further counseling for the child so that they can have the tools they need and the skills they need to break their bullying ways.
Trudy, when children engage in bullying behavior, do you take the child who is bullying another child and force that child to say, "I'm sorry"?
I think that it's more damaging to force an insincere apology than having no apology whatsoever. I tell parents it's more important for kids to show they're sorry, not just to say they're sorry. Oftentimes when kids are forced to say it, they can say, "Sorry," or "Sorry, I got caught." So what we need to do is to help educate those kids that if you're truly sorry, you make up for the hurt you caused others. And as an adult, you can give children, young children, prompts. What can you do to make that child feel better? Draw a picture, help to replace or repair a damaged item, and don't keep doing what you've done.
When parents or teachers force children to apologize, it can often re-victimize the victim. So I think we want to be mindful of the emotional state of the victim when apology does happen. So if the child who is engaging in bullying is ready to apologize, I think we need to make sure that the victim is in a state where they're ready to accept that apology and where it won't be adding to the further harm that they might have experienced.
Oh, good point. Thank you.
Very good.
Catherine, what about parental denial or shame?
You know, it's very common for parents to respond when they hear about that their child's been involved in bullying with some kind of level of concern or maybe even be upset about it. Potentially it could remind them of their own experience with bullying, and they bring into that conversation with their child some of their own baggage or history. But we really want parents to focus on their child and be emotionally available to their child in that situation so they can listen, they can hear the story the child has to tell, and be able to respond and coach them with positive strategies for resolving the situation rather than potentially that knee-jerk reaction of telling them to hit back, as we heard from Joe before,
Exactly.
what we want to really avoid.
So it's not about them, it's about the child.
Yeah, it's really staying very focused on the child and coaching them through with some positive strategies. For the adult, that might very well include calling someone if they're in a school setting or if they're in a daycare setting, reaching out to another adult within that context. Sometimes there are also opportunities that parents can reach out to other groups to try to prevent this issue from happening in the future.
What is the message to parents, though? Often schools will say, don't call another parent, you should call us first. Any advice to parents about that?
Yeah, we always recommend that it's good to have a third party involved in that conversation. Sometimes a parent, even feeling very cool-headed, could pick up the phone and call and say, oh, I think your kid's bullying my kid, and that can really elicit that kind of denial or that kind of negative emotion that we were just talking about. So putting somebody on the defensive, even if you have a friendly relationship with them, that can also create a little bit of a back and forth and a he said, she said.
I'd like to take a moment now and switch gears and move from intervention methods to methods of prevention. We know it's so important to start early. So, Mia, what are the strategies that you can instill to foster these skills to prevent bullying from happening in the first place?
Sure. Well, we know that less bullying happens in environments when there are very clear expectations of children's behavior, where there are policies in place and procedures in place for if bullying does happen, how the adults and children are going to respond to those situations. And we know that less bullying happens in environments where the adults place a priority on the relationships between the adult and children, that they have very caring and egalitarian relationships. And we also know that children can be taught specific pro-social skills and bullying prevention strategies.
Well, could you elaborate more on that? What are these skills, especially for preschool children? Because we do want to plant these seeds and start early.
Absolutely. So we can really build social emotional competency in very young children, starting with things like helping to build their empathy. Trudy had mentioned before about the importance of empathy. And you know, we really want to get children to start at a very basic level, understanding their own emotions and being able to talk about them, giving some language to them. And then we can help them kind of understand that, oh, other people have those emotions too. And that when bad things happen to us and we feel badly, that's how other people feel when bad things happen to them. So we get them to kind of understand a little bit about perspective taking.
And that's the fundamental learning in terms of building empathy, correct?
Yes, that's some of the underlying building blocks to learning empathy, indeed. And we also can teach them friendship skills. We can teach them very specific skills about how to join in to groups or how to notice that you should include another child in your play. We can teach them skills about sharing and trading and taking turns, really kind of drilling down to those very specific skills. And I think we can also teach children about tolerance and respect, that if people are different, that's okay.
Jamie, what advice can you give parents in terms of addressing bullying and how they could help their children develop healthy friendships and make healthy friendship choices?
Regarding friendship, We do know that children that are engaged in bullying, and in particular those that are victims of bullying, and we know that bullies can become victims, those children have difficulty making and keeping friends. And so parents can help to scaffold or support the formation of those meaningful friendships and the promotion of pro-social or sharing kinds of behaviors.
And also to help parents and teachers teach their children about what is a good friend.
Absolutely. High quality friendships are really important for children's development, and there's a difference between high quality friendships and those that are poor quality. And often poor quality friendships have high levels of aggressive behavior and perhaps even some bullying taking place. So that's an important message.
Okay, thank you.